Liz doing an investigative piece. Nice. Working with Jacob Wolf. That is how you get good at doing investigative pieces, working with Jacob and learning how he does it. Players were told by the organization the night of Halo's tweet that Immortals would disband the roster, but the public did not hear the news from the Valiant until January 29th. Yeah, I heard the same. Okay, let's read this article. Want some fucking... Let's go for some serious investigative... serious journalism. Investigative. Okay. The controversial move came on the heels of uncertainty for live esports events. I think I'm just struggling with long words today. 15 days. That's how long the Overwatch esports community sat in silence, awaiting news about the Valiant's unclear future. On January 14th, reporter Halo tweeted that they'd sold the Valiant to an unnamed Chinese organization, that it released its roster, denying the allegation of sale in one tweet, but confirming a move to the APAC region. Okay. Yep. Halo's report wasn't entirely correct, but the Immortals were not all that forthcoming either. Here's what actually happened, according to sources that spoke to Dot Esports. Over the Christmas-New Year's holiday period, the organization signed a one-year operating agreement with LGE. Lingam will not acquire any shares in the Valiant, nor have the option to buy the franchise at a later date, Immortals told Dot Esports. Okay, Lingam will not acquire any shares in the Valiant, nor have the option to buy the franchise at a later date, all of which could be things that were roped into an agreement like this, so I'm glad that we got that information out there as well. The Valiant ownership won't change hands, but the end result was the same. They broke up their roster just 2 months after signing them, and they found out through the tweet of a reporter. Oh boy. The suggestion to move to China, by the way, this is another one of the reasons that you should almost always get in touch with the organization before you leak stuff like this, because it gives them an opportunity to tell the people involved. I mean, that also could be like Halo did do that, but the Valiant just chose to ignore him or something. But generally speaking, that's also one of the reasons why you should get in touch with the people that you're reporting about. The suggestion to move to China came from the Overwatch League itself. Sources familiar with that discussion told Dot Esports. Immortals, who've been looking to exit Overwatch League for the past few months in some capacity, which aligns with the report that we saw from, was it Bloomberg in November or something, where they said that they were looking to focus on non-esport team portfolio assets or something like that. Immortals saw an opportunity to keep the asset while potentially increasing its brand potential in Overwatch's most popular market, according to sources. Siegel declined to comment specifically on a potential sale. This also makes sense. I can understand why the Overwatch League might want one of the teams, an extra team, to move to the APAC region, because then it balances it out 12 and 8. Yo, Miss Liz, I didn't see you in my chat, but I really appreciate you doing this article. Well done with this. And also, I hope that there's some kind of relationship there with Dot Esports and Jacob Wolf, where you can continue doing this kind of stuff and develop and grow and become another Jacob Wolf-esque kind of character, because this kind of shit pounds. This is fucking excellent journalism. Well done. Yeah, so what I was saying was, I can understand why the Overwatch League might suggest to the franchises that one of the NA orgs move to APAC so that it evens it out 12-7. Because 12-8. Having a 13-7 split makes formatting almost impossible to come up with good formats. So I can see why Overwatch League would reach out to a bunch of the NA orgs and ask if they have any interest. The question really becomes how much the Overwatch League pushed for it, and whether that influenced the timing of the Valiant's move. Because really, a lot of the shitty stuff that the Valiant did comes down, or rather the Immortals group did, comes down to the timing of the decision-making, right? The players were told by the organization the night of Halo's tweet that Immortals would disband the roster. The public did not hear the news until January 29th. When did he report? What was the time involved here? January 14th, so 15 days, yeah. Oh, yeah, that's why the article opened with 15 days. In their exit agreements, they signed both non-disparagement and non-disclosure clauses with Immortals. If the players made as much as passive-aggressive comments on social media, it violated those contracts. I fucking hate that. I hate that. Penalty for breaching said agreements would be a forced return of their severance, which equals an additional month of pay for most of the players. And I assume that one of the reasons they can do this is because they weren't obligated to pay out that additional month, because they can say that it came because of visa issues. Like, I don't think they were actually obligated to pay that additional month of pay. Anyway, let's carry on reading. A change in the organizational structure wasn't totally unexpected. In negotiating with Valiant, one management official told a player that there was a possibility of a change of ownership. Right. He thought the process would go more like the Houston Outlaws, who acquired from Immortals. Right. Sure. I mean, that makes total sense, by the way. Even if the staff says there's a possibility of a change of ownership, you don't expect to be axed before the season even begins. As an organization, we've always said we'll continue to be active in mergers and acquisitions. We'll be opportunistic in exploring whatever there is out there to improve our business. There's no sale process of any kind when we sign the players. We don't retain an advisor. We went in conversations with the counterparties. So any idea that there was an overhanging divestiture is untrue. Okay, right? But that doesn't actually change anything. Several weeks after players signed on in late October and early November, the Overwatch League proposed to a number of teams to move to China temporarily. Now, we already discussed how this would be advantageous for the Overwatch League in terms of format. Like, it is almost impossible to set up a format that works well when you have a 13-7 split. But here's the thing that might have begun the whole fucking. The Overwatch League only started to think about this in late October and early November, once teams had already signed the players. When in an ideal world, the Overwatch League should have thought about that beforehand and brought this up to the teams before the signing window had closed. Because if you're trying to get teams to move, then they have to be able to secure visas. Like, you're leaving that very late at that point, aren't you? The London Spitfire was leaving APAC, Philadelphia Fusion are going east. When the Valiant decided to move to China following that suggestion in late November, and I wonder kind of, it's hard to know like how persuasive the league were in this situation, or whether they just completely left it up to the team and just said, hey, we would like it if someone wanted to do this, but again, impossible to really know unless there's something in this article. Both there and the league's council concluded that obtaining visas for their players to move to China was impossible. This, to me, seems very strange. When had the Philadelphia... So why... Are Philadelphia moving to Korea? So Philadelphia moving to Korea, right? They have a Korean org as their sister team. Yeah. So they've got infrastructure set up in that situation. But also Valiant theoretically could have partnered with someone who had a infrastructure set up in China or Korea potentially. Like that, the whole decision to move to China is confusing to me actually, rather than Korea, because if you realize that moving to China with your roster is impossible, to me, that would then indicate, oh, well, maybe we should look to Korea instead. Because there's a lot of Korean contenders teams that you could potentially partner with that have infrastructure built up that they would have been able to get visas for. That to me is an interesting question. When the Valiant communicated a desire to play from Asia in 2021, we highlighted the logistical issues they would need to navigate, including the time it would take to secure visas. Additionally, we highlighted the need for them to put strong plans in place to support the players on their current roster if they were going to pursue a move at such a late stage in the year. Ultimately, they decided to go forward with temporary relocation to China for 2021. I suppose the question from this article as well is, at how much is the Overwatch League itself at fault? And what strikes me about this paragraph in particular is that Overwatch League wanted teams to move to Asia, but knew that there would be significant logistical issues with a move to China. And so really the only feasible option is to move to Korea. And like, if they were going to move to China, I don't know, it feels like, it feels silly for the Overwatch League to suggest it as a move when they know that it's going to cause all of these additional problems. So even though the Overwatch League is saying here, well, we did all the right things, telling Valiant that there would be issues, that needs to be factored in at the very beginning when you suggest China as a potential location for teams to move to. China is the biggest market for the Overwatch League and may be the first country to allow the league to return to live events. Talking about live events, the Spark actually put out a YouTube video recently where I don't know who it is, maybe it was their GM, talked about the fact that the Spark will be running or is planning to run live events in China where they have fans will be able to come, and I think they said interact in person with the team and with the staff. I don't know the extent of what the live events planned are, whether it's like signing things or you just get to talk to them from social distance or whatever it is, or you get to watch them or something so that you're in a crowd and they're far away. I don't know what the live event component is going to be, but the Spark put out a video saying they are planning live events. So I can understand why this would be attractive to the Valiant. But again, Ari Siegel just seems to not understand PR, or not even understand PR. He doesn't understand the community. He doesn't understand how the community would react to cutting your entire roster in order to have live events. And I don't think he understood how poor the team is likely to be because you're picking up the dregs of Chinese talent because you gave first pickings to everybody else because you made the decision so late in the season. This talks about how live events are so important for the entire business model of the Overwatch League, which is absolutely true. COVID was horrific hurdle for Overwatch League franchises to overcome. It was so poorly timed as well. It was supposed to be the first big year was 2020. This is just talking about the history of the Valiant as well and providing some context as to why they were previously loved, but their recent moves have gone in the opposite direction. Okay, so this is just a conclusion to the article talking about adding additional context. I guess I still have a couple of questions following this, which is I find it hard to apportion responsibility and accountability following this article because I don't think it's 100% clear how persuasive or firm the suggestions were from the Overwatch League. Like, if the Overwatch League literally... My understanding of it is that the Overwatch League just said, we have 13 teams currently in North America. We want 12 teams so that there's a better split. Are any of you interested in moving over to APAC? There'll potentially be live events. There are many advantages. There will also be these hurdles. If so, I think that's a responsible way that the Overwatch League managed the situation. If instead the Overwatch League said, like, we need one of you guys to move over and, like, pressured one of the orgs into moving, that's irresponsible. I assume from the way that this article is written that it's the former rather than the latter, but I guess that's still a reasonable question to have concluding this situation. The other big question I have is why, when the Valiant knew that they would have to fuck over their players in the move to China, did they not consider Korea as a different option? Why are they so intent on China? It seems like they were just sold by this idea that there would be live events in China and it was worth any amount of dicking over their players in order to get this benefit, which I think is bad decision making, both from a business point of view because they didn't anticipate the lashback from the fans, but also from a ethical point of view that they were just happy to dick over their players, sail them down the river without any notice in order to get this benefit. So that's my other big question. I would love to know why the Valiant did not try and pursue a partnership with a Korean team. Over the Christmas New Year holiday period, the organization signed the agreement with LGE. And yet they already knew at that point that obtaining visas for their players would be impossible. That again raises the question for Ari Siegel and the rest of the Immortals group, why were you okay? Or not, I suppose that isn't the first question. The first question is, was the same kind of agreement here that you made with LGE impossible with a Korean organization? Yes, and then the players not finding out until January, again, is pretty horrific. Yeah, that's the other part that I suppose I haven't even touched on, really. And something that is really important is that they already knew during the Christmas period that it was going to be impossible and they would have to have a whole new roster. And during the Christmas period, it's possible that they could have shipped players to other teams. Actually, maybe that was still going on behind the scenes, though. Immortals as a team may have been selling their players without their players knowing since late December. It's not necessary for the players to know for them to still be doing the right thing by their players in trying to ship them off to new homes, in theory. Now, whether or not that actually happened is, I think, up for a bit of debate. I agree, it probably would have been leaked if they were shopping players around. Yes, they did ship a couple of players to other teams, Jacob. They've already announced that as well. They shipped Shax over to the London Spitfire, they shipped Kai over to the Atlanta Reign, and who knows, there may be others as well that haven't been announced yet, but they have already announced that. But I guess the question really is, when did that happen? Because if they were already doing that, as soon as they realized that they weren't able to get visas for them, like during the Christmas period, then if they started this process like January 1st or something, shipping the players to other teams, that is pretty responsible, even if you don't tell the players. I mean, the players themselves should be told, I think, at that point, but at least you're doing right by them to try and get them new homes. But the later you leave it, the more irresponsible it becomes. Anyway, I think the end result of this article is just thank you, Jacob Wolf and Liz, for doing serious investigative journalism within the Overwatch scene. Thank you for getting to the root of a situation which had so much mystery and questions around it. This is an excellent article, absolutely what we needed, and holds the correct people accountable, I think, and shines a bit of a light on the Overwatch League's involvement, because a lot of people were wondering what the Overwatch League had to do with it and why they would approve a move like this too. So yeah, big props. And I hope that Liz carries on doing these in the future too, and potentially working under Jacob and learning more about doing that kind of stuff, because this kind of journalism in esports is really important and not done enough of it, or rather there aren't enough people doing it, is I suppose the important part.